This episode's brought to you by the Public Domain Shop, a clothing brand inspired by classic literature and film. Use the code Wolff to get 10% off your next sweatshirt purchase. There's a lot of reasons to own a DVD of Over the Garden Wall. It's a great show, you keep physical media alive, and there's no North American Blu-ray. Thanks for nothing, Cartoon Network. But when I first heard of the composer's cut and learned it was only available on DVD, I instantly bought it off Amazon, and having finally watched it in the dark on an Autumn's Eve, it was like rediscovering the show all over again. For those who don't know, the composer's cut is a near-silent movie version of the show. No dialogue, sound effects, subtitles, or captions. At least my DVD player wouldn't show any of them. Apparently some people have subtitles, so that could have just been me. Whatever piece of the blasting company's beautiful musical score and whoever's singing in the moment is all we can hear. And before we get into what I love about the show, I'm actually going to start with the flaws of the composer's cut, because as much as I loved watching it, removing sound and dialogue did make certain moments or entire episodes less fun for obvious reasons. It goes without saying, Over the Garden Wall wasn't created in the same vein as Daft Punk's Interstellar or a Fantasia movie where the animation and music are what tell the story, so this isn't for anyone watching for the first time. You'd have to be such a diehard fan that, especially during the minute or two stretches where, if the scene's focus is on dialogue, there's no score in the background, you could quote these characters verbatim in your head like I did. Which was still fun to do, but even if there were subtitles, without the energy and passion of the voice cast, certain episodes or individual lines of dialogue just aren't as impactful, be it comedy.
Fred's a talking horse. He can do whatever he wants.
I want to steal.
Let's go steal his stuff.
Or drama.
There is only the forest, and there is only surrender.
Do not speak of my daughter. She would not wish this.
The perfect frog name.
It's my fault we ended up here. Everything's been my fault.
Thankfully, the only episode where the lack of sound made it bad was probably Mad Love, an episode that features a lot of one-liners and in-depth conversations between Wirt and Beatrice especially that...
Well, guess we have to spend some quality time together.
in dead silence are just redundant and not really visually told. And the worst part is, the episode has no song to make up for it, except during the end credits, which I'll get to later. Just 2 or 3 background pieces that, because they were in the original episode in this exact order, they just endlessly loop to the point of it being really annoying. Something no one should ever say about this music, but even in episodes that got better for visual storytelling, they repeat the same 2 pieces over and over, and unlike listening to the soundtrack where hearing's all you have to do, when you're just watching the kids walking through the woods and hearing the same song 3 times in a row, it may come off monotonous. And in regards to the parts that have no sound, I'm kinda torn. On the one hand, one thing I legitimately hate about silent movies are how they're never allowed to have moments of complete silence. There always has to be music in the background, even if it doesn't match the movie, because if not, apparently we're all gonna get bored even though we're watching the movie, not listening. Modern silent movies at least have sound effects and ambient noise to be more authentic, and get away with moments like that. So it is nice to have literal quiet moments to just watch the characters interact, and through their body language we can still follow what's happening. But at the same time, rewatching scenes like the Wolff attack where it's actually pretty slow paced, not very threatening, and we're clearly valuing his life more than his 5-year-old brother at that point, except for when it's convenient.
Wuss, 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 wuss.
The dead silence can make you reconsider which moments hold up better than others. Alright, so with everything about how turning the show silent can be dull at times, more often than not, the silent treatment actually makes episodes just as good, if not better. For one, there was a point in time where, I'm not kidding, and I'm kind of ashamed to say this now, I used to think the show's animation wasn't particularly stylish. Not bad, but in my head, the emphasis on fast dialogue always made for a supposed lack of visual storytelling, but right from the very first episode, the blasting company's instrumentals, especially the piano and violin solos, and the bright, vibrant, yet still somewhat muted color palette of red, orange, and yellow, makes everything about the show's iconic autumn atmosphere, from falling leaves, empty trees, and the vast scale of the brown-scale woods, gorgeous and haunting to look at, and by removing the dialogue, you're literally forced to pay more attention to the facial expressions and body language of each character, which instantly communicates everyone's personalities perfectly, and if need be, the score can elevate the emotions we're supposed to feel for them. Wirt's over-dramatic posturing lets us know right away he worries too much, but the sheer amount of anxiety in his facial reactions makes us sympathize and feel his fear in each situation. Yeah, for the most part. Compared to Greg's energetic yet more calm, laid-back vibes that, even without Collin Dean's fantastic performance, a performance that, yes, you do miss from time to time, are still charming and hilarious. Schooltown Follies and Lullaby and Frogland, the episodes that had the most straight up slapstick and physical comedy, were probably the main episodes that got funnier with Greg and or everyone else's reactions, and the more horn-based soundtrack that inherently just sounds funnier. Frogland especially had entire background jokes and routines I never gave much thought until now. And as the show goes on and the brothers face more danger, when Wirt starts to give up being more mean-spirited to Greg, it's easier without hearing his constant moping to look at Greg's antics and see why he frustrates Wirt on a regular basis without ever being mad at Greg for getting them both in trouble or Wirt for venting rather than addressing the problems and forgiving him. I was hoping that would make him more tolerable in the flashbacks, but no, his whiny faces as he worries about what we all know is really nothing. You can see it from space that Sarah wants him instead of Thunder Pervert, Greg could tell you that. Were still really annoying, but going back on track, seeing them in the episodes where they're on their own or separated from each other, especially in the finale, the more tragic songs really strengthen the emotional bond between the brothers. Hearing the morbid lyrics of the Black Train as they enter the unknown, especially taking their age into account, listening to how there's no coming back from this train ride, Come Wayward Souls when the Woodsman approaches Greg's tree body, feels more impactful just listening to how operatic Samuel Ramey's deep bass voice is, and I'm not even kidding, a slower French version of Potatoes and Molasses, which sounded a little weird at first, but then it hit me, a sad, somber version of Greg's most hopeful song as he's on the brink of death as the two brothers confess their guilt to each other. It's fucking heartbreaking, and I gotta be honest, Come Wayward Souls and French Potatoes and Molasses are songs I never listened to on the soundtrack until now because it was just sad. It was a scary reminder of what could have happened, and it's the rare time where I just couldn't face something like that just listening to a soundtrack. And before I forget, zeroing in on the film noir style lighting, the lantern casts on the Woodsman's already grumpy face, every time he maniacally warns the boys of the beast's presence, it's clear he's thinking more of the anger and vengeance towards the beast rather than protecting the boys. Looking back, it's no wonder the boys don't trust him, but compare that to the fear and helplessness in his eyes when face to face with the beast. The lack of a mouth on his face is creepier to look at, and his devilish glowing eyes when dictating his orders sells the power he has over the Woodsman. Speaking of which, the emphasis on music and the characters' facial features or lack thereof, especially if they're grotesque or beyond exaggerated, honestly took the episodes that creeped me out most and made them even scarier. Hard Times at the Huskin Bee was the prime example where the townspeople of Pottsfield's pumpkin masks, with already weird expressions on them that don't move, were more unnerving when everyone corners the boys trying to leave, but not as much as Enoch having the only costume whose mouth moves, is the size of a giant, and can contort his arms every time he peers out of the shadows and looms over the boys. As much as I like Chris Isaak's voice, all of these gestures made a character I already know isn't a threat genuinely terrifying. Right down to the timing of the skeletons climbing out of their holes with rocks in them, because
You guys don't like rocks, right?
No, we don't like rocks.
it's the atmosphere created by the music and animation in each of these scenes that makes you judge the emotions of the imagery more than the actual logic, creating an almost entirely new experience of the show. Even scenes I don't like with sound on, like Adelaide's death. As rushed and thin as Beatrice's betrayal arc was, Adelaide's theme comprised of ominous piano keys and string instruments as she intimidates Beatrice and captures the boys before melting like the wicked witch she is,
What the fuck?
suddenly became a more haunting, tragic scene to me. And as for the actual musical numbers, episodes like Schooltown Follies and Songs of the Dark Lantern that arguably had the most music are when it occurred to me that for the gaps in between each song that are either background music or dead silence, there wasn't as many songs per episode as I actually remembered. For a near 2-hour miniseries, the soundtrack itself is only 54 minutes. So once a character breaks into song, there's actually more of an impact that adds energy to the scene and keeps the show's original spontaneity. If an episode's songs are more background noise than integral to the plot, like the Into the Unknown flashbacks that honestly have good 90s era music and a marching band tune that was actually pretty awesome, hearing the lyrics more in depth for the first time can make you appreciate them a lot more. Or if the original version never played full versions of the songs that were only on the soundtrack, you could hear tunes like a courting song in full and in sync with the episode for once, which, since that's one of my favorites, was awesome to hear. And at the end of each episode, instead of the piano outro, it ended with a verse of either songs like Adelaide Parade or Patient is the Night that didn't make the cut, or alternate songs they never used. And I'm not gonna lie, moments like this are when I wish episodes were longer than 11 minutes just to squeeze everything in, and don't get me wrong, none of these verses are game changers, but for songs that were in the show, the verses are just as catchy, and it's clear they were only cut for time or they just didn't figure out how to weave them in together.
Come on, it's really fun to shout her name.
None of the rejected songs are from Sketches of the Unknown, which is kind of disappointing. Those were pretty catchy tunes. And on the other hand, rejected songs for episodes like Mad Love or Ringing of the Bell always sounded tonally jarring compared to the rest of the show and didn't even feel like they belonged in the same genre of folk and jazz. So it's really no wonder they weren't featured, but thankfully there aren't many bad examples of songs for a show like Over the Garden Wall, and I don't know how often you could say a movie or show that's already great can be equally good, if not better, with a silent movie cut. Lord knows we haven't had many options. But after seeing the composer's cut of Over the Garden Wall, I think I found a new way of watching the show every Halloween. It's a gimmick that doesn't always work, and for that reason alone, I might actually alternate between episodes on which ones to do with sound or not, and if so, you guys will be the first to hear about it. But the parts that were sadder, scarier, and occasionally even funnier than before just brought out so much more emotion in me than I've had from this show since the very beginning. If you have a DVD of it, watch it in the dark, watch it on a weekend with the wind blowing or the rain in the background, and it'll be a cherry on top. And with that, guys, thanks as always for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen the composer's cut, which episodes you like more in silence than with sound, because it's really hard for me to decide. Whatever they are, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews, check me out on Patreon and buy me a coffee, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.